The mayor has a presentation for us. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Welcome to City Hall. It's great to be here. We have a special occasion tonight. We have Dr. Kataya, our superintendent. If you could please come up. We have music teachers, students, administration. Please come up. We have a special presentation. I have a proclamation. Through all the hard work and effort through our Board of Education for inspiring students to learn, to teach music, it's benefited our community tremendously. As you know, we have a very vibrant Milford Arts Council. We have Porch Fest. And people say to me, hey, Mr. Mayor, how do we improve the arts? How do we make it better? The answer is in our schools. We teach our kids at a young age the arts, the importance of the arts, and how it brings a community together and make a community stronger. And with that being said, for the 4th year in a row, Milford Public Schools has been honored with the best communities for music education from the NAMM Foundation, and this award shines light on all the efforts of teachers, administrators, parents, students, and community leaders who encourage music education. I most recently went to the Smooth Jazz Fest by Jay Rowe, which was very inspiring. He took the time to have the students from Jonathan Law, the jazz club, perform. And I must say, they are very, very talented. We have a very talented group of students in our schools, throughout our schools, all of our schools, and that's going to continue. And this demonstrates that. They play a vital role of developing a well-rounded student's education, and through well-planned instruction and exposure to the arts, students develop initiative, creative ability, self-expression, self-reflection, thinking skills, discipline, a heightened appreciation of beauty, cross-cultural understanding, and so much more. And that's what it exactly does. It builds our culture as a community. It brings us closer together to have events with music, with kids. That's our tradition here in Milford. Music education can help students thrive in school, build self-confidence, improve academic performance, and so much more. Milford Public Schools offers our students a wide variety of music programming in general music, music technology, voice, chorus, instrumental, and orchestra, strings. And when the arts are central to the learning environment, schools become a place of discovery and conditions for learning to improve. And I've been going to a lot of the school concerts. This is the time of year. So if you have the opportunity to attend, please do. Now, therefore, I, Anthony S. Chinnitasio, Mayor of the City of Milford, Connecticut, by the virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby designate Monday, today, May 6, 2024, as a day to congratulate the continuing efforts of the Milford Board of Education for recognizing the importance of music for the students in Milford and earning the prestigious recognition of the best communities for music education. Congratulations to you all. Thank you, and please attend a school music function. May 21st, 23rd. May 23rd, Jonathan Law High School. There's going to be a concert, so I expect to see you all there. Thank you.
Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Alderman Archiola.
Present.
Alderman Beatty.
Present.
Alderman Bevan. Alderman Casey.
Here.
Alderman Federico.
Here.
Alderman Fowler.
Here.
Alderman Healy.
Here.
Alderman Jenkins. Alderman Marlowe.
Here.
Alderman Mulrennan.
Here.
Alderman Piselli. Alderman Smith.
Here.
Alderman Vitro.
Here.
Alderman Vitale. Alderman Willis.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The next portion of the meeting is devoted to public comment. Statements are strictly limited to the legislative function of the Board of Aldermen. Please use every effort to limit public speaking to the permissible business of the Board of Aldermen. The time limit granted to each speaker shall be 3 minutes. Residents, taxpayers, and electors may address the board at this time. The board encourages speakers not to express derogatory, insensitive, or offensive statements or to engage in personal attacks against individuals. In order to allow everyone an opportunity to speak, I ask that everyone please limit their comments to 3 minutes. Please keep in mind that the structure of our meeting does not allow for two-way dialogue during public comment or to answer your questions. Residents can contact their district alderman by phone or by email regarding any issues or concerns. We welcome and appreciate your comments and opinions regarding city business and community matters. All your concerns will be taken into consideration. We thank you for your cooperation. Anyone wishing to address the board can do so at this time. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the board. My name is Michelle Kramer. I live at 104 West River Street. I'm the current president of the Milford Preservation Trust, and I'm the vice chair of the Milford Historic Preservation Commission. Tonight, you will hear from representatives of Milford's 5 preservation groups: the Milford Preservation Trust, the Milford Historical Society, the Milford Historic Preservation Commission, and commissioners from our 2 local historic districts, south of the Green and the North Street Duck Pond. May is National Historic Preservation Month, and tonight my colleagues and I have one very simple question to ask. Does Milford, that is, its various boards, commissions, and departments, have the will and the determination to preserve what remains of Milford's historic resources, our built heritage? There is a DOT sign on the Interstate 95 which beckons visitors to come to historic downtown Milford. I think the time has come for us to ask, how much more of historic downtown Milford are we prepared to lose? Yes, Milford has 2 historic districts, but both are increasingly under pressure from large-scale development, rendering them sort of small islands surrounded by dense development, and thus they lose their integrity, they lose their context. So if you think, to come in to the North Street Duck Pond, one runs the gauntlet of car dealerships, turns down North Street, and has this wonderful historic district. And likewise, south of the Green, come down Cherry Street, where we have lost untold numbers of Victorian homes, Greek Revival homes. And it just makes those historic districts much less vital, much less, almost like threatens their integrity. The Milford Green, which served as a militia training ground during the American Revolution and was finally, thank goodness, added to the State Register of Historic Places in 2018, is also being compromised by large-scale development. Now, we all understand that housing needs are great and that response to those needs will require a very delicate balance and careful consideration and also some creativity. And like all of you, we are all volunteers, and we are happy to work hard for our community. But we're here tonight to ask not in specific terms tonight, maybe in another few months, for better preservation practices and better stewardship of our historic, non-renewable resources. In closing, I want to read to you a passage from a recent article in Money magazine. Now, mind you, I said Money magazine, not Preservation News. It starts by citing Milford as one of the 50 best places to live in the United States. And the article begins like this. Dating back to 1639, this small city has a classic New England feel. Settled in 1639, Milford, Connecticut is a tight-knit, historic community that sits just 20 minutes away from Bridgeport and New Haven. This small city has a classic New England feel, thanks to its sprinkling of 18th century homes and dotted with small local businesses. I think that small New England feel is precisely what's at stake now. And I want to close by borrowing a line from the tagline of Preservation Connecticut, and that is, historic preservation doesn't cost, it pays. Thank you for your consideration.
Good evening, Aldermen, Alderwomen, Mayor, and officials. My name is Ann Mayer. I live at 50 Prospect Street in a historic district that's not a local historic district, but happens to be the River Park Historic District and has been part of a historic district for decades now. I am here as a member of the Milford Preservation Trust, but I'm also here as a concerned citizen who has chosen Milford to be my home. And in the 20+ years that I've lived in a historic district, I fought tooth and nail to keep that charm. I fought tooth and nail to keep the vibrancy of a downtown area. I fought tooth and nail to make sure that we all understand that it's not about one person or one yard. It's about a community. To that end, I do volunteer. I volunteer for the historic organizations that I work for. I volunteer for nonprofits. I volunteer here in the city of Milford as well on one of the boards here. And I thank you for listening to us tonight. History is important. What we lose, we forget why the city has changed, why things aren't as they used to be, why community doesn't seem to be as vibrant as it used to be. We're here, we're taxpayers, we're vested in the community, and we just ask for you to listen to our concerns and to also help us when it's important to do so. We're not looking to restore every historic building in the city. We are looking to preserve the essence of what makes Milford, Milford. Thank you very much.
Steve Rathbun, 44 Prospect Street. I'm also Vice President of the Milford Preservation Trust. First of all, I want to agree with what Michelle Kramer and Mayor said tonight. Milford has an amazing historic aspect, and that's what people look for when they move to Milford. We need to protect that and keep it alive. Overdevelopment is not good for that. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Richard Platt. It's 132 Platt Lane. I am a former city historian and a founding member of the Milford Preservation Trust. Michelle Kramer has already mentioned the article in Money magazine, and I will expand on that. Money magazine's latest list of the 50 best places to live in America reveals something we've all known for quite some time, that Milford is one of the best cities in the country. It was named one of America's best kept secrets with its history, coastline, classic New England architecture, and bustling downtown. These rankings prioritized affordability, good schools, strong job markets, and strong town culture sustained by engaged citizens and strong leadership. It's amazing for us to receive this national recognition, and we should all be proud to receive such a designation. Please do not do anything to change that designation. We are proud of our history, we're proud of our architecture, our culture here in town. Please do not allow anything to change this. We will be having, by the way, this coming July, a Founding Families Day. That is, people from all over will be coming to Milford who are descendants of the founders to take pictures on the Memorial Bridge. And I want them to be able to be proud of what they have found. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Vitro, Board of Aldermen, Mayor Genatasio, and your staff. My name is Scott Monfort, AKA Coach Scott, and my address is 39 Baker Street. I apologize, I'm a little hoarse tonight. I'm here on a positive note. I want to personally thank, before I personally thank a couple people, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. And tonight is not about me, but if you don't know me already, I've been coaching youth baseball since 1995. I currently am the director of Cal Ripken Baseball with Junior Major League Baseball. And I run a program called Born to Play and Future Stars, age 2 to 4. I have close to 200 players, and that's why I'm here tonight, because I want to thank Mayor Genatasio, I want to thank Chris Saley, Tom Hunt, and his staff over at Public Works. There's a field over at the Parson Complex. There's 2 softball fields. There's Parson 1 and Parson 2. Parson 2 has been grassed over. It hasn't been a field since 2015. And if you know me, with all those kids early Saturday and Sunday morning, I need a place where I can keep all the kids in one area. With the future stars and those 8 teams and all the new coaches, it's easy for me to go from Big Wasson Field to the Wasson Complex to the Parson Field 1, and now that field has been brought back to life thanks to Chris Saley and Public Works. I appreciate it. I spend countless hours as a volunteer, as you guys do, and I appreciate whether you're Democrat or Republican. I appreciate your service, and I appreciate your time to the community. Another thing about this field coming back to life is not only it can be used for baseball, it can be used for softball, it can be used for other sports. It's a nice complex, and if you haven't had a chance to go down, take a look, because it's been active again since Wednesday. And I really appreciate everything that the city has done for our league and for the other league in town and for all the other youth sports. And I'm just here tonight because I know it's been a long couple months with the budget, and I just want to bring some positive comments, and I want to thank you guys all for what you do to the community. Thank you very much.
My name is Tim Chaucer. I live at 104 Hawley Avenue, and I want to echo what the Preservation Board has said about preserving the historic character of Milford. Milford 1639 is the grandfather of all the other Milfords in America, and almost every state has a Milford. So people come back to Milford to see the historic character. But I'm also here for another reason. 34 years ago, Mayor Listman helped us establish a natural science center at the old Gulf Pond defunct wastewater facility. He provided cabinets, he provided pegboards so we could hang mounted fish, sea turtles, Native American artifacts. There's all kinds of things in the museum. Win Smith's great-grandfather actually had found a lot of natural science objects, and some of those objects are in the museum. Thousands of kids have come to our marine biology, science and art camps. And you speak of art, we give the kids a pine board and they draw their favorite whale or porpoise or what fish or whatever the animal, sea turtle. And so we do art at that camp and also at our bird identification art camp. We've heard a lot about art tonight with the school system, which is great. We've even had the children of former campers now coming to our camps. 34 years, a long time. In October, unfortunately, I got a phone call from Public Works that the museum was going to be closed. We want you out, is what the Public Works director said. I said, why? Why do you want us out? He said, to be proactive. Proactive about what? There's never been one incident in all the years, 34 years, thousands of kids, that's been a problem. And it's on a state wildlife refuge, okay? So I thought that was pretty unfortunate. I wrote some letters to the mayor. Unfortunately, I never got a written response from the mayor, but he's verbally said he's going to help us out. But it hasn't happened so far. The electricity was cut. Mayor Riccitelli helped us with the museum by bringing Milford marble from the old Milford marble quarry. So there's big chunks of Milford marble, which goes back 200 years to the Milford marble quarry. Mayor Jago supported the museum, and Mayor Blake increased the electricity so that I'll never forget the day. I walk in the museum, I flip on the lights after Mayor Blake had enhanced the electricity, and kids could now see artifacts more clearly and everything. There was light before, but it wasn't what Mayor Blake had done. So anyway, the bad news is recently some cedar trees. I've admired some of the biggest cedar trees in Milford for years at the site. Healthy cedar trees. They were all cut recently. Why? I don't know. I know cedar's worth a lot of money. But why they were cut, I don't know. Maybe the mayor knows why. I have no idea why they were cut, but they're all been cut near the old digesters. They're beautiful. And I really had quite a surprise when I went out with my assistant, Professor Steve Murray at Southern Connecticut. He's one of the most fantastic individuals you could know, and I'm very lucky to have had him as my assistant for not 34 years, but he's been my assistant for probably 10 years now. And anyway, there were 2 locks on the building. So the material that I've collected, and George J. Smith, the great-grandfather of Wynne here, that material is all being held hostage inside the building. Sea turtles, fish, cigar store Indians, Indian artifacts, you name it. It's all being held hostage. So, it's kind of bizarre. Milford is a great place, but New Haven kids get to go to the new multi-million-dollar Peabody Museum of Natural Science, and Milford kids, in the meantime, have their Natural Science Museum for 34 years cut out from them. So I'm a very positive person, but this is a negative story. This is a picture here of Dr. Helen Langner with the kids. Okay, this is 1995. The photo was taken, and these kids are all in their 30s today. All right, so I just want everybody to be aware of it, and I know Anthony's going to help us out some way, but I've been treated pretty rudely by some people, and that should not stand. So I appreciate any help you can give me. Thank you all so much.
Good evening. I'll try to keep this short and sweet. Good evening, members of the Board of Aldermen and the Mayor. My name is Jeff Viscount. I reside at 59 Chatham Avenue. I'm a Navy veteran for 6 years. I'm here to speak out as a member of the Walnut Beach Association with a concern that some of us in our organization have noted down in our area. This concern is the seawall at the end of Laurel Avenue. It has collapsed into the beach and is a danger, especially to kids that may choose to play around it. Not to mention, it is not aesthetically appealing in its present condition. It is in dire need of repair. In closing, I feel that Walnut Beach is a vital part of the Milford community, so issues that sporadically come up which are brought to the attention of the city by residents should be addressed. Okay, thank you for taking the time to hear me out.
Good evening. My name is Eric Johnson, 40 Benson Street. As an active member of the Walnut Beach Association, I'd like to echo Jeff's concerns. I'm a commissioner on the Milford Historic Preservation Commission, and I'd like to advocate for this body to consider whatever can be done under their power to include some more direct language and speaking to the integrity and protection of our shared historic neighborhoods and spaces. By ordinance, the Milford Historic Preservation Commission's duties include, quote, to promote the educational, cultural, economic, environmental, and general welfare of our municipality, to protect and enhance the attractiveness of our locality, to foster appropriate use and wider public knowledge and appreciation of our distinctive areas, to ensure and foster preservation, restoration, rehabilitation that respects the historic, cultural, and architectural significance of our distinctive areas, and to draft and apply design standards in a reasonable and flexible manner to prevent the unnecessary loss of a community's historic character. Our downtown green is surrounded on all sides by structures, open spaces, and landmarks that are currently inventoried by the State Historic Preservation Office as having historic significance. We're currently seeing an alarming trend in the earmarking of such properties for development, which is inconsistent with what remains of the historic character of our city, particularly our downtown. The size and the scope of said projects, both completed and in proposal, damage the non-renewable nature of our city's most precious, popular, and unifying public spaces. We're here this evening united to advocate for the preservation of structures of historical and architectural significance within our city that have an impact on the adjacent historically registered properties. The scope and size of such properties, particularly within the MCDD, harm the historic character and presence that our commission was indeed created to protect. The MCDD language itself states, quote, that its purpose is to preserve the unique character of Milford Center, including the built environment, while simultaneously placing no minimum requirements on green space. I wonder exactly how this is to benefit the character of our city and its historic neighborhoods. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is John Kranz. I live at 15 West Main Street. That's the old parsonage. It's right on the other side of that wall over there. It's the white building next to the duck pond. I'm a Milford Historic Preservation Commission member. I'm also a carpenter. I have a small carpentry business in town here. And I feel like I have a unique perspective to bring to the whole historic argument here. See, a lot of people just don't understand what really happens. You know, we have these districts, you know, we're saving these houses, we're protecting our history, right? But what we don't see is what happens really quickly, almost overnight. You know, it's a fence here, it's historic wood windows there, it's, you know, vinyl siding over here. It happens in a blink while you're not looking. It could happen while you're on your commute to work, while you're away at work, while you're away for the weekend. And maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe it's one house in a neighborhood, you know, and you don't really notice. But I think what Michelle was speaking to earlier about the fabric of a district, it is all those things. It's the fences, it's the wood windows with the wood muntins that are true divided light. I mean, these things, they all add up to the whole. So I think as someone who swings a hammer for a living, you know, I can bring this perspective to you guys who maybe don't necessarily see that little small detail and how that matters. But what we need to do, I think, is help preserve these buildings, because the carpenters who built these homes and these buildings hundreds of years ago, before there was electricity in some cases, you know, with their bare hands, men better than me, much better than me, they're not here to defend them. And I think, you know, it's kind of my role to stick up for them and for the buildings. And that's not to say anything at all about how it represents the rest of the city and the 1639 and our rich history. You know, I'm all for saving as many buildings as we can. I don't think we need, I like museums and they're important, but we need homeowners who care about these buildings, people who are going to paint them, people who are going to mow the lawns, people who are going to, take care of them. I think that means so much to the future, not just, a week from now or a month from now, but 5, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. I mean, some of these homes that we're talking about that we've lost are hundreds of years old, I mean, we have literally one of the oldest houses in all of New England. I mean, that's a really big deal. Some of the codes that we have nowadays, and I'll speak to this because, again, I feel like I deal with them, so I can speak to it. Some of the codes we have now to build to a certain standard, they don't hold a candle to what these guys did back in the day. I mean, honestly, that's just speaking the truth. And now, granted, they had, better trees, better wood, but man, they sawed this stuff by hand. They cut it all by hand. For some of us to just be like, oh, it's rotted, it's beyond saving, it's disrespectful, it's a lot of times it can certainly seem like a money grab, but I, for one, don't think that any building is ever beyond repair. I think it's a matter of how much you're willing to do to save that property. And I know sometimes that can be, very expensive, and sometimes we gotta do that. But I don't think we can just say, let's get rid of these buildings and let's build some brand new, whatever it is. It doesn't mean the same as these buildings. Nowhere else in the country has the history that we do here. I think we should hang on to it. I think it's very important. I think that's the work that we're doing on our commission. I think, that's the work that some of the other commissions are doing as well. We appreciate the work that you guys do for this city as well. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Hello, good evening. I'm Valentina Uvezai. I'm from 61 Beach Shore Drive, and I'm a member of the Walnut Beach Association, here to support and echo Jean's and Eric's comments about the seawall collapsing at the end of Laurel Avenue. That seawall has collapsed and been a safety hazard for years. Not months, not 1 year, not 2 years, years. We've been incredibly patient, and we deserve better. It's time to fix the wall. Please prioritize it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Thomas. I reside at 8 Argyle Road. I'm here to speak on the city budget. I know the next few weeks you guys will be voting to finalize the budget. Wonderfully, some of my thunder has been stolen here tonight. You're already hearing that, as I said a month ago, we live in one of the best places in the country. That's just a fact now. Now it's been publicized. We can't debate it anymore. So trying to say that people don't want to move here, or that there's issues with the schools, or there's issues with the economic development, we know it's not right. We know it's false. We know there's some things we can improve, and I remember, I'm advocating helping everybody here a little bit. Let's preserve the historic districts. I served for a short time before I had some health issues years ago on the historic district south of the Green. They do great work. We got to appreciate these volunteers. As for the budget, all right, let's jump right into it. Since I last spoke to you, you've had the Director of Community and Economic Development come before you and say, quote, the education budget is absolutely integrated into economic development. And quote, we have to support the education system. That's your Director of Economic and Community Development saying that, okay? Then when you heard the parents at last month's hearing, all right, talk about, yes, their children actually were getting served in the schools, that some of the myths and misinformation about teaching coaches was wrong, was inaccurate, was at worst incomplete, all right? You then may have noticed, I know I follow You Know You Live in Milford on Facebook. There was somebody asking a question about the Milford schools. And elementary school parents repeated again and again and again what wonderful services our children get in the schools. So I don't really understand what the issue is. I understand people think maybe they got a little too much with their last year, and I know it's not a cut this year, it's a cut to what they asked, but we have to think about what's right. All right? We know parents love the place. We know children are doing well here. We know that outside organizations are saying so. It's not just our opinions. For the last 12 years, this school district has been making tremendous progress. All right? We got to give a lot of thanks to things like the Milford Education Foundation, which is a nonpartisan group of parents, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents that came together and pushed for meaningful change. They were lucky. They had two good superintendents that were willing to work with them, Dr. Fieser and now Dr. Kataya. And we have, I'll be blunt with you, just in case you don't know, our elementary schools are just outstanding, period. If you want to debate me, we can pick a night and we can debate that. All right? So, one of the things, I got to find a way to keep my phone open more here. All right. Let me jump right to the big things. So, you already heard from numerous speakers tonight, we're one of the 50th best places to live. Part of that's because of our school system. All right? I think the right thing to do when so many people are telling you, so many organizations are telling you how good we are, is to find compromise and put a little good faith in it. I don't think there's any chance of the full funding being restored at this point, but I can't believe that you find people who are volunteering much of your time can't find common ground. As a citizen, I don't want to say I'm angry, I'm upset and disappointed. I really do feel like some things I've heard from the Republican Party have been misguided. They've been almost shots at the public school system, perhaps to score points. And I'm disappointed and upset at the Democrats because the Democrats started attacking the mayor's budget as a tax increase way back in March, which doesn't serve anybody's purpose either. You guys, you're not a wing of the Biden party, you're not a wing of the Trump party or whoever gets the nomination. You're from Milford. All right? The stuff I see on both Facebook pages it's upsetting and it's unnecessary. You're here to serve Milford. Find some common ground. Think of what Mayor Gianastasio just did in pointing out that it's not like 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years in a row our school district has been rewarded for the arts. We're a shining beacon of education, of thinking, just so many different things. And I really do hope, I'm not optimistic, but I really do hope that you guys can find some common ground and restore some of the funding. And on a personal note, since I do have a child involved in choir, which was honored tonight, I'm going to make sure I go to the school board meeting. I think Sue Glennon's in the back, Dr. Kataya was here before, and I'm going to tell them they need to give more funding to the choir and the drama programs because they've already shown they improve success. Thank you guys for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anna Souza Martins. I reside at 6 Stowe Ave, and I'm happy to say that I'm a new resident of Milford. I'm here on behalf of being a resident of Milford as well as Walnut Beach Association. I ask you this evening, I actually implore you this evening for assistance with safety in the Walnut Beach area, especially the wall that was spoken this evening, the concrete wall on Laurel Ave. When I look out my window, I'm very concerned about that. We also have a house that is under renovation, and the deck is a cause of safety for the public beach right there in between Laurel Ave and Stowe Ave. And finally, the last concern is street signs. There is no street sign. And so I had to call the fire department a few weeks ago for an issue in my house, and there was no street sign for them to find my home. So that's a major concern. Again, I chose Milford. I chose to come to live in Milford from Trumbull, Connecticut, because I wanted to live on the beach, and I wanted to specifically live at Walnut Beach area, in the Walnut Beach area. So I do implore your assistance with these safety issues. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Lindsay Darling Doyle. I live at 48 Winthrop Court, and I'm here in support of Michelle and the Historic Commission. I grew up, and now I'm raising my family in the area with many historic homes, buildings, and walkable to the downtown area. I'm in support of progress and moving forward, but I hope that we can work together as a community to ensure that this progress is respectful of the charm and the history of Milford. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Katie Pomis. I'm also here tonight in support of the Milford Preservation Society. I just wanted to voice my sadness and concern over the loss of the historic charm of downtown Milford due to overdevelopment. While I don't want to stand in the way of progress, nor am I naive to think that change won't occur, I do wonder why it has to be at the cost of history and charm. Many other towns in Connecticut have found ways to balance between the two, and I wonder why we have not been able to. I stand here on behalf of hundreds of residents who have also commented on the sadness of seeing 147 Broad Street being demolished to a large apartment complex. I moved back to the area during COVID from Stamford in order to be part of a quaint community. At this rate, I look around with all of the new development and I feel like I'm living back in a large city. I barely see any charm left. So I do hope we can find a way to work together and make sure that the developers are held accountable and, to be able to develop in a way which we don't have to lose some character. And I do just want to leave on a note reminding you about what the Planning and Zoning website says. One of their missions, it says, is responsible growth and development, an attractive built environment, and preservation of Milford's unique character and natural environments. I'm not really seeing that, but I hope that we can get there and work together as a community. Thank you.
Is there anyone else like to address the board at this time? I don't see any more. We'll move on to agenda item number 3, consideration of minutes. Alderman Pacelli.
Consideration of the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen held on April 1st, 2024.
There's a motion on the floor to accept the minutes of the April 1st. Second. And a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 4. There was no special organizational meeting. Move on to agenda item number 5, Chairman's report. I'd just like to wish the mothers on the board and the mothers over there and the mothers out in the audience a very happy Mother's Day. And I hope everyone is safe and happy for the month of May. We'll move on to the mayor's report. Mr. Mayor, is there a report?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Yes, I would also like to wish all the mothers of Milford and the mother of the mayor a very happy Mother's Day. This week happens to be Public Service Recognition Week, so I'd like to thank all of you, the board members. I'd like to thank the dedicated and talented team of city employees that work for the city of Milford and all the volunteers of civic organizations, nonprofits, and some of them were here tonight before us. I want to thank them as well for coming out and voicing their concerns. Milford's a very vibrant, strong community, and we all want to fight for the best Milford possible. I also like to share with you that May 15th is Mental Health Month, or May is Mental Health Month. There was a mental health event that was scheduled for yesterday, but due to the weather it was canceled. I believe it's been rescheduled for May 19th down at Eisenhower Park. So if you have the opportunity to attend, I think it's a great event. I actually attended last year. I'm looking forward to it. Just a little history. I was fortunate enough to attend the Milford Striped Bass Club Children's Trout Derby Saturday, down at the Duck Pond. And it's an interesting story. I learned that there was two friends, Bob Mahoney and Pete Hebert, 56 years ago. They stocked the pond with fish. They put a small ad in the paper. At that time, it was probably in the Milford Citizen. And they invited all the children of Milford to come fish. So 56 years later, this started in 1968. It's still ongoing, and I want to extend my thanks and gratitude to the Milford Devon Rotary for helping it along. They actually purchased a big portion of the fish that were delivered Friday afternoon, and the kids love it. It's become a generational event, and I think at some point our former city historian has left. I would like to see this documented as part of Milford's history, and if we can put maybe a plaque down there for these two gentlemen. This is something that started 56 years ago, and I see it going on and on for years to come. So it was a great event. Also want to remind you that the Memorial Day Parade is in May. The wreath laying ceremony will take place on Sunday, May 26th at 9:45 at City Hall, and the parade will step off at 2 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. So I look forward to walking in the parade and supporting our veterans. The other thing I'd like to mention also is the Milford Harbor will be hosting Pirates Day this month, which is a great event, great family event. It attracts not only the Milford families, but families from Stratford, Orange, West Haven, from all around. It's really grown through the years. I will be captured, so I'm hoping that I will be released to do my civic duties. But other than that, item 8A has been removed from the agenda, so I respectfully request your considerations and actions on 8B through 8H. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderman Pacelli, agenda item 8B.
I'm going to go to 7A.
7A, I'm sorry, unfinished business.
Unfinished business.
There is no unfinished business. I'm sorry, 7A, there is unfinished business. Alderman Pacelli.
Thank you. Agenda item 7A, Board of Aldermen approval is requested for the year 2022 State Homeland Security Grant Program Region 2 Memorandum of Agreement, and that the city enter into with and deliver to the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security any and all documents which it deems to be necessary or appropriate, and that the mayor is authorized to take all steps necessary, including the signing of all documents to effectuate said memorandum of understanding. This item was postponed from April 1st, 2024.
Second.
The motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Smith.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to postpone.
We have a motion on the floor to postpone. Do I hear a second? We have a motion on the floor and a second to postpone. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, did you want a brief reason for the motion? Or?
Yeah, give me a reason for postponement, Alderman Smith.
The memorandum of understanding was before us last month, and there were some questions that arose on that. And the proposers, the fire chief, and the city attorney and the mayor were in agreement that perhaps some time to answer those questions should be granted. And they were good enough to set up a couple of Zoom meetings with the various agencies involved, in particular the Homeland Security folks. And they've gone through most of the document and answered a great many questions, but not all. We had a meeting, I think it was last Friday, by Zoom, and they were called away in the midst of that meeting because of the fire in the Norwalk Bridge. And we rescheduled for this Friday another hour, which should easily complete the remaining questions, some of which I think are fairly substantial, and I have some thoughts that I'd like to try to work through with them on how the document could be changed, but we haven't completed those discussions just yet.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. There's a motion on the floor and a second.
I have a question.
Alderman Pacelli.
Is it a motion to postpone to next month's meeting?
Yes, there should be ample time.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Alderman Federico.
Through you to the mayor and the city attorney, I just want to be sure, is there any detriment to the city by postponing this for a month?
Mr. Chair, through you to Alderman Federico, no. We still meet the deadline.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it's over
Yes.
here. Sorry. Before we move on, we're getting a lot of feedback. I think it's from the microphone. I'm just going to go and unplug it. Yeah.
Alderman Pacelli, agenda item number 7B.
7B, an ordinance amending an ordinance establishing compensation of city officials and employees in the service of the city of Milford, postponed from March 4th, 2024 and April 1st, 2024.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? We have a presentation.
We're going to use this one. This one has less feedback.
We'll see. Can you hear me now through this, or do I need it closer? Okay. Good evening. Deborah Kelly, Assistant City Attorney. I can give you a little presentation, and I expect you may have some questions also. The ordinance that is before you, the non-rep wage ordinance, is one that typically follows after the supervisor's contract has been settled. For those of you who have been on the board, you may recall that during Mayor Smith's term as mayor, we had negotiated two contracts that came before the board, the fire union contract and the supervisor's union contract. Both of those contracts were a little bit different in that they did not contain standard general wage increases across the board percentage-wise. In the fire union contract, we added a step to top step firefighter, which kind of had a trickle-down effect, impacting lieutenants, fire inspector, battalion chief, etc. So in addition to the general wage increase, we did some step manipulation. And with the supervisor's contract, there was also some step manipulation. But what we did with the supervisors is everybody received an across-the-board $2 flat increase in addition to the 2.5% for the second and third year of the contract. And there were 3 positions that were carved out, and they were given additional steps. So the assessor, the tax collector, and the purchasing agent were 3 positions that traditionally only had 3 steps, and we added 2 steps. So the supervisor's contract usually paves the way for the non-rep ordinance. Once the supervisors is resolved, we draft the non-rep ordinance and we present it to the board. So we did so in conjunction with the Human Resources Office and Department and the City Attorney's Office. And at the time that Mayor Smith was mayor, he commissioned a salary survey to begin. And the first item on the agenda for the salary survey was to conduct a salary survey with specific reference to our non-rep positions, which are typically department heads and then some other positions in the city as well. And Mr. Hazelkamp, who is here this evening and can answer questions if you have any, he was hired as a contract employee to undertake several projects within the Human Resources Department, but he was tasked with conducting the salary survey. Mr. Hazelkamp has extensive human resources contract negotiations experience, and salary and wage study experience. So he conducted the survey, and based upon the information gleaned from that survey, we came up with the wage ordinance that's before you this evening. I know there was some confusion in the past 2 meetings. We didn't have an opportunity to speak, but we're here tonight, like I said, to answer any questions. But I think just to kind of give you a general idea of what we did, and I can explain it, and certainly Mr. Hazelkamp can explain where the data came from. But across the board, each of the non-rep positions will receive a $2 per hour wage increase, just like we did with the supervisors. With the exception of certain positions that will just get a 2.5% increase for the 3 years. So based on information we got from the salary survey, some of our positions were paid below average, and those positions that were identified as below average received the $2 an hour flat, like the supervisors got, and then the percentage increase. Those positions were at or above received the general wage increase or the cost of living increase, which was 2.5% for the 3 years. There were 5 positions that I think you're familiar with that we specifically carved out to do step manipulation, like we did with fire and like we did with supervisors. Those 5 positions that were identified they fell below 5%, below average from those that were in the survey, and in order to bring them up to market rate or attempt to bring them up to market rate, we implemented $2 an hour in the first year and then the 2.5 and 2.5, but we added steps. So again, where there were only 3 steps, we added 2 steps, so that ultimately when they reach that 5th step, they still won't be necessarily at the market rate for the comparables, because I assume that those comparables will also be receiving increases in the next 2 years, but it's just to get them closer. The position of Economic and Community Development Director was far below the average, and so in order to bring that up to market rate, what we did was we kind of worked backwards and said, well, if we created a 5th step and then we worked backwards, what does that step 0 have to look like? So that's what you see in your package. The only other 2 positions that are kind of worth noting or should be noted is the health director position had received a stipend in the amount of $12,000, I think it was. That amount is folded into the wage instead of presented as a stipend. And then the deputy health director was bumped up $300 in order to be on par with counterparts within the health department that are union contract wages. So I know I spoke kind of fast, maybe probably still some confusion, but I can certainly field any questions, and if you'd like, it might make sense for Jim Hazelkamp to present some information on how he conducted the salary survey.
I'll do this very quickly. My name's Jim Hazelkamp. I'm a project person in the HR department, lifelong Milford resident. I've been in the HR field for 36 years. I've worked in 6 municipalities. I have had a lot of experience doing salary surveys as the lead negotiator for the towns that I've been employed, and I also developed compensation plans for non-union staff. So, when I first started, Tanya tasked me at the behest of Mayor Smith at the time to do a salary survey for all 40 positions, and I conducted a review using the 40 positions and gathering data from comparable towns. And just so you know how the towns came about, it was by population from all towns between the population of 45,000 and 65,000. There were 12 municipalities in that range, and once I determined that I would use those 12, I gathered data from their budgets, from their union contracts in some cases, because some of the positions are in unions in other towns, and I did salary surveys directly with most of the towns. After I gathered all the data, in the instances where there was sufficient data to actually do some analysis, there are some positions. We have a harbor position in this town that only exists in one other town. So we didn't use the data where there was insufficient number of comparable towns. So at the end of that process, I conducted an analysis of the data, and then there was a selection process of those positions that were the lowest below the average. And that's where the 5 positions that are at issue, that's how those were developed. Some of them were significantly below average. The Economic Development Director, and I'll share any information you want, is so far below almost all the Economic Development Directors in the state of Connecticut. And it's the case with all 5 positions. All of them were below the average of the 12 municipalities that were surveyed, and there was a recommendation to come up with a new salary grid for those folks and spread the costs across several years. It isn't as if we're jumping from 100,000 to 130,000. There's a step system that's put in place because I understand that you can't go from 0 to 100. So there's a process where over time, those 5 positions will get closer toward the average of the other comparable municipalities that we used. And I'll certainly answer any questions that you might have.
Alderman Archiola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Hi, Jim.
Hi, how are you?
I was wondering how Milford compared in terms of benefits. I don't know if that was looked at.
It was not. It's hard enough to get data on salaries. You know, a good example is, I know some people want to use CCM's data. It's the worst data to use. No one uses CCM's data because it's not kept update. They rely on the municipalities to enter the data in. Very few do it. I know because I've been in 6 towns and we didn't do it in most of those towns. To undertake a full, because there's no doubt that we have good benefits in Milford on a comparative basis. Some of them are better than most of the other ones, but it was strictly a salary survey in this case and did not include benefits.
That's my only question. Thank you.
Alderman Healy.
Mr. Hazelkamp, can you identify the municipalities that you use, the 12?
Sure. Let's see. Bristol, East Hartford, Fairfield, Hamden, Manchester, Meriden, Middletown, Stratford, Southington, Wallingford, and West Haven.
In the municipalities where you formerly worked, you said again you had 36 years in HR as an HR director.
Where have I worked? I worked.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I worked in Stamford, Bridgeport, Waterbury, Trumbull, Fairfield, I'm missing, Norwalk.
That's good. And in conducting this survey, you made contact with counterparts, professionals that you knew in those municipalities and looked at data? Because you mentioned you didn't use the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities data. So when you conducted your salary survey, what methodology did you use, and did you make personal contact with HR directors?
Yeah, in most instances I had personal contact because I have a lot of connections in that field. In a lot of cases I also looked at budget documents to see what the tables of organization looked within the finance department, because not all the job titles match up very well. Some towns might have an assistant director of finance, which is the equivalent to our chief accountant. So I would go through the budget documents to sort of take a look at the tables of organization, salary surveys. Like I said, some cases I'd use union contracts because some of these positions are in unions in a lot of other towns. So it was a combination of data gathering from multiple sources, because I had to also get it. In some places it didn't match up with years. Like some places were behind us and didn't have current salary data for a whole bunch of reasons. But and most of it was in the budget documents.
But the 5 that are here that have been identified, how did you arrive at those 5 again?
They were the worst in the category that I looked at. I didn't.
Out of the 4.
There was no exercise. I didn't cherry pick the 5. Those 5 were, if I took the average of all the salaries within a given job category, those 5 were the 5 worst of all of the ones that I had sufficient data to compare against. That's how I came up with the 5.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Pasali.
Through you to Mr. Hazelkamp, thank you for being here today. Can you tell me what the cutoff percentage was? In other words, you had indicated that these were the lowest of the bunch, but at some point you had to say, well, which one is low but not low enough?
Yeah, so at 50%, the target was 50%. I started looking at them if they were at the 45th percentile or lower, meaning that they were in the bottom 45% of the whole range of people. Oh, sorry. I'm going to go to me because I have a hard time hearing, sorry. So you had to be below in the bottom 45% of the average. Thank you.
So any of the other individuals that were part of the study that fell above that range were not included here? We're just dealing with those that were...
Right, they would have been 45% or more. Some of them were beyond the range. Some of them were right at the average. These were 45, at the lower 45 percentile.
Can you explain the 45 percentile?
It was sort of an arbitrary. I could have went 50, but there was.
No, but what does that mean? There were 40. They were in the lowest 45%. Explain that to me.
Sure. If it's, let's just say the salary average was $150,000, right? Let's say that was the average. I looked at if the people were below 145,000, I looked at them. That's how I just developed a group to look at. I could have used 50, I just used 45.
Okay, you answered the question. Thank you.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Maybe Peter can give me a number. Peter, what are the benefits per employee cost the city in an average total benefit package per employee? Have any idea?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Vitale, I don't have an exact number, but if you look at the health insurance, for instance, obviously it ranges between individual coverage and family, but that alone could be roughly, let's just say 25,000 alone in terms of benefits for an employee for the health insurance. And then you have to consider the pension as well. Thank you.
So is there an average number that we can throw on the pension? An average number for health is, you're saying $25,000. Is there a number we throw on the pension?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I don't have that number. We would have to look into that and get back to you.
So you wouldn't have any a ballpark figure on that at all?
No.
Thank you.
Alderman Beatty.
Through you, Chairperson Vitro, thank you to our guest speaker. Thank you for the information you have given us. I have a few questions. Someone asked the question about benefits and how difficult that is to measure, but I understood, if I understood it correctly from Deb Kelly's presentation, that there was a comparison, and it's quite usual when the represented employees get a raise that then this follows. And we're familiar with that on the Board of Aldermen, that then is brought forward to us, correct?
I can't really speak to that, but I'll have to, I wasn't here when that happened, so.
Well,
I can speak to that, I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. If I understand your question correctly, are you asking about the natural progression that typically when the supervisor's contract settles, then we would bring before you the non-rep ordinance?
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, because the issue of health benefits came up, that the non-represented employees follow the supervisors for benefits. And so when we negotiated the increase in the premium cost share for the supervisors, at that very same time, the premium cost share was increased for the non-represented employees. So in effect, they've been paying a higher cost share without the benefit of a cost of living adjustment.
Okay, so there's parity there.
Yes.
But what about benefits that are negotiated for the represented employees at time of contract that aren't, they give up something, such as compensation or comp time or more autonomy in the office that they have given up for that 2.5%? Is there any truth to that the non-represented employees retain some of those benefits, even a week longer in vacation? Is that true? So when you're talking about parity, just using the money, there's a little nuance there.
There could be, but I would say, through you, Mr. Chair, I would say in a typical negotiation, those are the two money items that we look at for both the union contracts and for the non-represented. So we look at cost of increases for wages, and then we look at premium cost share adjustment. So those are the typical money factors. There's not a lot of monetary consideration that goes into the negotiation. I mean, from our being in front of you in executive session, a lot of what they're giving up are management rights. So the ability to, call somebody back for overtime, or the ability to, direct their workforce, that kind of thing. There's not that I can think of or that I can recall, especially in fire and in supervisors, the two most recently negotiated. I can't think of anything monetarily that those unions gave up in exchange for the $2 an hour, in exchange for the percentage increase.
Okay, and then I have another question. You said Mayor Smith commissioned a salary survey for the non-representative department heads, and we were very glad of that. The Board of Alders had been on record of asking about a salary survey. Wasn't that done before this? Is this the first salary survey? Have raises been given without a salary survey? And has it ever been done before? And is it going to be done in the future? Is this pro forma?
Through you, Mr. Chair, since I've been here for almost 14 years, I don't think that there has been an official salary survey that's been conducted. I know we use data that we see coming out of Wethersfield as far as settlements from other towns. We use our networking opportunities. I was just at a seminar on Friday, and we contact, through working with different municipalities, we have a pretty good finger on the pulse of where wage increases are going and premium cost share increases are going, and we see that data from Wethersfield as far as settlements and arbitration awards of that nature. So that's kind of where we gauge where to go, but this is the first salary survey that's been commissioned again since I've been here. And I do know that Mr. Hazelkamp is working on others as well. This was kind of like the kickstart since we had just resolved fire and supervisors, and since Mr. Smith came in Mayor Smith came in kind of toward the tail end of those two negotiations, and the next order of business would have been the non-representatives, but we do have Mr. Hazelkamp working on others as well, because we currently are in negotiations with our Public Works Union, and we have 3 other contracts that are expiring this June.
Right. And this, yeah, okay. So there's some plan to do salary surveys when those...
Yes.
And then lastly, I have one other to Mr. Hazelkamp, I guess it is. Thank you. You're a contract employee for HR. Now, some of the salary increases are related to actual personnel positions within HR. Is it usual to do a salary survey from within a position of the department or the administration, or is it done as an outside consultant?
Probably both, because sometimes towns will hire outside consultants. In this case, there's only one HR position that's covered, and that's the HR director. Right. So I don't think it's unusual. It's not. It can go either way. I don't find it unusual because it's not. Somebody has to do it. And it's not anything other than gathering. That's actually one of the easiest jobs because the titles match up. Everybody usually has an HR director job, so the titles usually are easy to figure out.
So forgive me for not knowing, I guess it's my fault, but you introduced yourself as a contract employee of HR working on other projects. That's good, I welcome that. But would the other projects be these salary surveys for other employees? And I'm thinking of the city employees in administrative positions in other parts of the city. Is that going to be looked at?
So I'm only here till July 1st. So I'm currently doing the Public Works contract. I believe that contract that you referred to has been settled. So I'm currently sort of working on the ones that are in the pipeline. Public Works, nurses, those are open right now. So I'm doing salary surveys for those groups right now, along with MSA, which is another supervisors group. So.
And when one does a salary survey, such as yours, even if a contract is settled, but say it's recently settled, the city employees do you look back on that to take a wink at
I think, based not necessarily on this, but based sort of on my history, typically what happens is contract is settled, you can't hire mechanics, you can't hire this, that, or the other thing, and the town may go to the union and say, look, we can't hire, WPCA is a good example. Every place I've been, it's hard to hire licenses that work in the WPCA arena. So it's not unusual that in certain circumstances, even the contract being closed, that you can look at salaries and say, you know what, particularly if you can't recruit anybody, you don't have a choice sometimes to raise those salaries. That would be atypical. That would not, normally happen. But I can tell you it certainly has happened, at least in my career, that happens fairly frequently, particularly right now because there's lots of competition among municipalities for staff. I used to joke that people are just stealing from other towns, right. And that's sort of what's going on in that regard.
And I think that was my last question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Chair Vitro, through you. I have a question just in regards to the health department. It's described as having a stipend, which is very different than the others. Can you just explain why that is? And
I think I know why. I missed something. This wasn't part of my bailiwick, but I believe through some reorganizations a couple of years ago, there was a stipend given for additional responsibilities. That stipend now has been rolled into the base pay, which is what's reflected in the ordinance. So that's sort of what evolved in that.
so, it shows the base pay, but we don't have steps involved there, so you don't have like the 0, 1, 2,
no,
where the added. No, it just shows if you have an MD versus if you have an MPH. Those are the two categories that are listed there, and there are no steps or.
What page are you on? I'm sorry.
Page 9. And the same actually applies for, I assume there's a reason, I don't know what the reason is. It just struck me as being very different than the others. So page 9 towards the bottom. It's the health director.
I found it. You are correct. That does not have steps.
No. Yeah, so is
I
there,
think it's historical, but I don't know if you can speak to it. I don't know why there's just,
I know that there are certain positions, and just like I stated, with the 5 positions that were discussed earlier, those traditionally only had 3 steps, and we added the 2. So for whatever reason, historically, yes, there are certain positions that only have 1 step. And I believe the Director of Permitting and Land Use is one, and let's see, I'm looking at the old ordinance right now. So the Health Director, correct, there's only the 1 each, depending on whether it's an MD or MPH.
yeah, so is that an equitable approach? That they're different than the rest?
Through you, Mr. Chair, again, I can only say that this is the way it's been. Certainly, it's something that we could look at for the future of introducing other steps. And again, you know, the question was asked whether or not we have done this before as far as taken into consideration a salary survey. And I think perhaps with the data that we have now, I think really the matter before this board was to introduce a salary structure that was comparable to the market rate that was contained in the survey. But certainly, I think we could look to adding some steps depending upon the information that we've gleaned from that survey. Certainly, we could kind of spread it out, but I know that what's presented in the 1 step right now is commensurate with what was derived from the survey.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the information that you both have provided. It has added a great deal of clarity, because having all these numbers and these categories and trying to decipher that there was a lot of holes for us, and I think you filled in a lot of those holes, so thank you very much for your explanations.
thank you.
Alderman Marlowe.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. Just, and maybe you're not the one to explain, but with the steps, how does that really work? What step do they come in at, and when is the next step? And in particular, I'm just, not anyone in particular, I just happen to be looking at the library director, and for the for last fiscal year, I see it's highlighted in step 2, and for this fiscal year, it would be step 3. So how is that really working? What constitutes from one step to the other?
So typically speaking, when employees are hired, they're hired at the first step. In the past, there has been some discretion whether or not an employee would come in at first step, or whether, depending, I mean, there was some discretion, I'll say. So it could be dependent upon where they were coming from their prior employer. So we didn't want to hire somebody that was making a certain amount and then come in and they would be below. So we had some discretion. I didn't have, I think that was the mayor's discretion of what step they would come in at. And then for each year anniversary, you move up to the next step. I think the explanation for why there are different, highlighted, I'm sorry, here we go. Really, that was for purposes of the step manipulation for the 5 positions, and it was to show where each of the current placeholders would be. When you're referring to the blue shading, is that what you're referring to? So that was just a way of understanding that even though, for example, the Director of Public Works, even though he's been here for, I think, 10 years and is technically right now at top step, with this step manipulation, he wouldn't jump to the top step of that category. So for 7-1-23, that's why it's shaded, he would fall under the first step and then progress for each year thereafter to the next step.
Okay, thank you. So back to the library director, I know we're hiring or will be hiring a new library director. What step will he enter at?
We just hired him. I know we just hired someone. I don't know what step they placed him at.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure what step that individual came in at. I do know it was a new hire. I'm not sure if Peter, if you have that information. Peter's looking it up. Through you, Mr. Chair, Peter, I'm sorry to do this to you, but Tanya Barnes must be watching from home, and she just texted me to let me know that the new library director came in at the bottom step.
At the bottom meaning 0?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, as I heard you before, if I'm correct, it all depends. The HR is going to put that job out, so we don't know where we're going to get the new librarian from. So let's say they're coming from Westport, and they were, as far as if I understand this properly, she was making as much as the third step in your calculations. So wouldn't she start out as the third step to get her hired?
Through you, to you, Mr. Chair. I think that's the discussion that we're talking about. So I don't think it's a given that if you come making a certain wage that's where you're going to land when you come in, because a variety of factors would be taken into consideration. I think when the job is posted, the range is posted. And then it depends on the interview process, I'm sure, and you know, how qualified the candidate is, what the years of experience are, how well they fit in. So I think there are a number of factors that go into it, and quite frankly, I would have to imagine it would be, you know, if it came down to a number of candidates, and one in particular we really wanted, but they weren't willing to make the jump from, you know, their current town, or maybe they have other offers, then I think it would be within the discretion of the mayor to offer a higher step to attract that talent.
So there really is a lot of things to consider. Thank you.
Correct.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the Assistant City Attorney, Deborah,
yes,
you had indicated cost share increases. So within the reps and the non-reps, what are the present cost share and what will they be going to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if I have my supervisor's notes on me, but I can tell you whatever, yeah, I could look it up, that whatever the supervisor's contract was negotiated, those are the premium cost share increases that the non-represented employees have been paying since that contract had been negotiated.
What is it?
If you give
That's
me-
an important statistic as far as the cost sharing on the insurance, the health insurance.
I believe they're currently at 17% premium cost share.
The reps or non-rep?
The supervisors and the non-represented employees, they follow the same insurance, so they would have the same premium cost share.
17 this year?
For the PPO plan. And then the HSA, I believe, is 10%.
And what will it be going up to?
Effective 7/1/24, the premium cost share for the PPO will go up to 18%, and then effective 7/1/25, it will be 19.5%. On the high deductible health plan, currently 10%, effective 7/1/24, 11%, and 7/1/25, 12%.
Thank you.
Alderman Beatty.
Thank you, Chairperson Vitro. Through you, this is to Mr. Hazelkamp. My understanding, and this is in defense of steps, there seems to be a little misunderstanding about steps. Steps are a convention that protect the employer, so you can do budget planning, that's number one, and also they protect the employee. And in the public sector, mostly, when there are cutbacks, the steps protect, because the public always says, it's a time of inflation, why are they getting a raise? And so most people, I have to say this, because I've heard it come up again and again and again, that steps somehow are a negative. But in a time of retrenchment, if you work for a bank, they don't say there are no raises at all this year and the next year, you know. It's not absorbed in that way by the employee, but the risk is in the public sector that it would be. So the steps protect. And the only time it comes into trouble, of course, if you hire somebody with lots of experience and degrees or knowledge, credentials, whatever, they may be hired at a higher step, but it's frowned on because those steps are deliberately set up to protect the employee so they can move. So if you hire somebody new, you don't want to hire them at a higher step unless it's you. Is that accurate? Because somehow, whenever we talk about steps, it's looked askance, as if you're guaranteeing something. You are, so that the municipality can plan the budget. They know they're going to get.
So I would agree with you that it helps with planning the budget. I don't know if I agree with some of the other statements. There's been plenty of other municipalities where in 2017, where they froze steps. So steps are not an automatic process. In the context of contract negotiations, you can make proposals to freeze steps, but it is certainly a process that is pervasive in the public sector. It's unusual. Police, fire, almost all the contracts have step movements. I've been involved in some towns where there were not steps for department heads, where there was not a step system, but so it cuts both ways. It's intended to have some process where people know what their salary progressions will be over time, but then when they hit top step, they are usually capped at general wage increases. There's no bonuses or anything like that on top of that kind of process.
Alderman Marlowe.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'm just going to go back to the library director again, just because I'm looking at that. And you said it was step 0 for the fiscal year of 2024, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, what you have in front of you, this was prepared at the time that Chris Angeli was still our library director. She's since retired.
Understood.
So if you're referring to the blue shading,
yes,
that would be representative of what the library director at the time, Chris Angeli, would be at and would progress to. So the shading does not apply to the new library director, who I believe isn't starting until sometime later this month.
So would that apply to any of these other positions with the shaded? If they're at a lower step, then what was the purpose of doing the salary survey?
So the reason that it's done in blue is to let you know how they're going to be progressing through the step system. Because as we just articulated, we have, at least from my perspective, you couldn't take them, if I was already here 10 years and it showed that I was $30,000 behind the average, I understand how this works. You weren't going to, and I wouldn't approve it either, to take a $30,000 jump. So what we did was we artificially took a salary, and there was some adjustment, and then over time, it catches up to the average. And it's really a cost mitigation process so that that overall cost gets spread out over several years. That's the real reason for that. So the blue is nothing but to identify to you folks, this is how these particular people, 4 of them now, 4 of the 5, will move through the steps and where they will be. Because it doesn't tie to their years of service, because we had to artificially create a new step system for them.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the Alderman Federico?
Mr. Chairman, through you to the Finance Director. Before we vote on this, I just want to ensure from our conversations during the budget hearings, the increases presented here are not included in the salaries in the budget book, but they are held for in the salary reserve. Can you confirm the dollar amount if we passed everything as is? The total impact?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Alderman Federico, are you asking for the impact to the fiscal year 25 budget that you're working on?
Yes.
Okay. That specific impact, I estimate, is approximately $152,000.
Okay. And when does, if someone qualifies for a retroactive pay, does that get paid in the fiscal 25 budget? In the budget before us?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Alderman Federico, it would likely be paid out in the fiscal year 25. I mean, just to give the payroll office, give people time in order to process all the retros. So it doesn't happen immediately, but once a contract is settled or a non-rep ordinance is approved, then retros are done as soon as possible. Obviously, it takes time. It's not done immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. So the 152 includes the retro?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Alderman Federico, the 152 represents, you had asked, where the salaries are in the budget, and those have to go up. So that, for the most part, represents the increase for fiscal year 25, and also, I believe, the increase for fiscal year 24.
Which is the retro, right?
Any year prior to fiscal 25 would be the retro, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any more questions for the city attorney? I think you did it. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
And asking and answering all our questions. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to propose a 5-minute recess.
Yes. We're in recess. Healy.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Finance Director, on this particular topic relative to the salary increases, also budget, I just wanted to thank the Finance Director for the time that he allotted me personally on telephone calls and at his office to avail himself and time to clarify matters. Greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Is there any more discussion before we vote? I don't see any more discussion. Alderman Smith.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. In a year in which it appears as though we're going to be having a substantial tax increase, I think this is the wrong year to be raising salaries at these levels. And I think that the people in the city of Milford deserve to have this board do some of the difficult work to minimize or perhaps alleviate the coming tax increases. Moreover, as a matter of budgeting, it's, in my opinion, a bad practice to have retroactive raises. This also suffers from, I think, the negative component that our pension plan is, to my understanding, approximately 20% underfunded as we speak today. These increases are just going to aggravate that underfunding. So, in my opinion, in the aggregate, in a year of tax increases, with the retroactive component and the amount of these increases and its negative impact on other things like the budget, like the pension plan, it seems to me the only prudent thing to do is to vote no and vote this down, and I intend to vote no and vote this down.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. Is there any other, any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Roll call vote, Madam Secretary, please.
Alderman Archiola?
Yes.
Alderman Beatty?
Yes.
Alderman Bevan? Yes. Alderman Casey?
No.
Alderman Federico? Yes. Alderman Fowler?
No.
Alderman Healy?
Yes.
Alderman Jenkins? Yes. Alderman Marlowe? I'm sorry? Alderman Morenin?
Yes.
Alderman Pacelli?
Yes.
Alderman Smith?
No.
Alderman Vitro?
Yes.
Alderman Vitale? Alderman Willis?
Yes.
4 noes, 11 yeses.
I'm sorry, Madam.
4 noes and 11 yeses.
11 yeses, 4 noes. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Alderman Pacelli, agenda item 8B.
Agenda item 8B, Board of Aldermen approval is requested for the attached resolution regarding the grant application for the Department of Human Services.
Second.
A motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Smith.
Yes, and I see this resolution. Maybe this is something to the administration. It says that the board is cognizant of the conditions and prerequisites for state assistance as imposed by chapters 133 and 300A. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure what those conditions and prerequisites are.
Mr. Chair, through you to Alderman Smith, if you give me a few moments, I'll look up the Connecticut General Statutes in terms of that's
fine.
boilerplate language that comes from the Department of the state, that this resolution is allowing us to apply for grants, not to receive them at this point, but simply to apply for the grants. Just give me a second.
And if I could, to follow up on that, in number 2, it says that the board recognizes the responsibility for the provision of local grants and aid to the extent they are necessary and required for said program. What program? Which program are they referring to when they say said program?
Mr. Chair, through you to Alderman Smith, they're referring to the Human Services Program. I believe Director Joseph is here, who also runs our Human Service Program. As you may recall, Alderman Smith, Human Services was a separate entity, if you will, which was folded into the Health Department 8 years ago, which DEPA took over. So this is the grant for the Human Services Program, formerly run by Lisa Diamond Moran. And that was the subject of the stipend, which we talked about moments ago, which is now folded into the approved salary for Director Joseph.
Good evening, everyone. So the chapters referenced here and the specific said program referenced in the resolution, as Attorney Burcham mentioned, relates to the programs administered through the Department of Human Services. Specifically, this is giving us permission to apply for grants for the department to run many of the emergency financial assistance programs that we run through the department. So our emergency utility assistance program, rent and mortgage, emergency food assistance, all of those programs where we provide that direct assistance are accomplished through these grants that we would be applying for, or that we do apply for on an annual basis.
If I could, Mr. Chairman. So in the second whereas clause, it says undertaking a human services program. You're saying it's not a program, but it's a series of programs?
Correct.
Do we know how much this grant is for?
So it varies from year to year. So we apply for as much as we can. I can tell you for the previous fiscal year, it was around $40,000. So we tend to apply for more than $40,000, but it's what we get approved for. So last year it was about $40,000.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, what happens if we don't get the grant, or if this board was to vote no on this authorizing resolution?
We cannot apply for that funding, and we will not be able to provide direct emergency financial assistance to Milford residents in need.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Alderman Pacelli, agenda item 8C.
Agenda item 8C, Board of Aldermen approval is requested for the attached resolution regarding grant application for youth and family services activities.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Smith.
Again, the first numbered section says the conditions and prerequisites. This time it's not the chapters, but a specific section of 17-443. Now, what is that condition and prerequisite? And I was going to ask, how is it different from the other ones?
So, through you, Chair, to Alderman Smith, this specific resolution is relative to youth and family services work. So this section of the general statute discusses youth service bureaus. So the prior resolution was specific to emergency assistance. This is around youth service bureaus within the state of Connecticut, which Milford Youth and Family Services is one of those youth service bureaus, which qualifies us to apply for financial, for grants through the state. So that state grant is typically around $60,000. It varies from year to year depending on what the state allocates, but it's typically around $60,000, and it allows us to provide services directly to youth and families in Milford. So things like group therapy at our elementary schools, positive youth development programs within the community, all of the backpack back to school supply program, assisting with the recreation summer camps. All of those things are done through this funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Hi, Dee. Do any of these grants, when you get them, when they're awarded, require hiring of additional personnel?
No, these grants at Human Services, again, they're programmatic grants, and so it is our staff at Human Services that administers those programs, and we do not hire additional staff.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Pacelli, agenda item 8D.
Agenda item 8D, Board of Aldermen approval is requested for the attached resolution regarding grant application for the Office of Early Childhood.
Second.
Motion had been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Yes, Alderman Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Just pretty much same question. How much did we receive in the past from this particular grant?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Alderman Fowler. This particular grant is through the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood. The city is really more so a pass-through entity. This funding goes directly to Good Child Development Center and is specifically to fund slots at their center for families who are financially income eligible for those slots.
But is there a dollar amount we've received?
1.3 million over 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Pacelli, agenda item 8E.
Agenda item 8E, Board of Aldermen approval is hereby requested for the attached allocation transfer number 7, fund balance unreserved, undesignated to fire vehicles.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I guess this is a question for Peter. I guess what would we use the $20,000 for? What do we anticipate it for?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Fowler, I don't think that the fire department has a specific use as of now, but they would like to have these funds available for either a small equipment purchase or to help with any emergency repairs if they're short funding in their operating budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Just for the board's information, I signed the title for the sale of the fire truck. It was sold to a museum in Turkey, to a third world country. So the tower will be in Turkey. If you ever get a chance to visit Turkey, you can go see Tower 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just a question of the mayor.
Yeah, Alderman Arciola.
Will the truck say Milford on it?
No, the decals were...
What a waste.
Were removed. Thank you.
And is any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Pacelli, agenda item 8F.
Agenda item 8F, Board of Aldermen approval is requested for the attached benefit and use agreement for removal of storm debris and to authorize the mayor, public works director, and city attorney to take all steps necessary, including signing all documents to effectuate said agreement.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see the Public Works Director. I do have a couple questions on the contract. And while you're coming up here, this agreement, unlike that other one that we took the postponement on, this is a really, in my opinion, a really good agreement for the city of Milford. Assuming some of these questions here are just follow on. When the document references the client agency, I think that client agency is Milford, right? We're the client agency as it's represented throughout the document.
Alderman Smith, I'm not a lawyer, so I would let Attorney Bertram answer that, but I assume it is.
Mr. Chair, through you to Alderman Smith, yes.
And I see that the term of the document started on October 31st of 23. Just curious, why is it coming to us now 6-7 months later?
Well, we're being proactive, actually. This was after a significant storm, and this company came in to help us assist to get FEMA reimbursement. They presently manage, I believe, 30 towns in the state. It's a state contract that went through state vetting, and we're being proactive for this. This is something we never use, but if we do need it, it'll be available with your guys' approval.
Mr. Chair, if I could maybe clarify, I think there's some confusion, and maybe I can help you out, Alderman Smith.
Yeah, it may follow on to the next question.
So the contract that's attached to 8F is a contract between the state of Connecticut and Ashbridge perspective, and what is before this board tonight is a request for the Alderman to approve the city to avail itself of the same contract. The state went out to bid, and pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 7-148V, parens B, we can avail ourselves of that bidding process by entering the same contract. So when you asked, the October 3rd date is when the state entered its contract. The city has not contracted with Ashford at this point in time. I hope that clarifies.
That does help, but that adds to the follow-on question. So the contract, I see the authorizing resolution says that it empowers the city to enter into a contract. Is the contract that we're going to enter into identical to this contract?
Identical, yes.
Okay. And then on Exhibit B, there were prices that are set out for the work that's going to be done. Have you reviewed those? I mean, are those reasonable prices for what these folks are going to do? They talk about shipping costs and tonnage and tipping fees. That's beyond.
Yeah, so the state vets this. It's a national company to do a tremendous amount of work, disaster restoration, disaster restoring. So it's a fair price for what they're doing, yes.
And you said that we've worked with this company before? You've worked with this company before?
After a significant storm, was it 2 years ago, they assisted us on some of the FEMA reimbursement. And Attorney Bertram's right, it was outside this contract. We brought him in for assistance.
And the way I read this contract is for these kinds of services here, we're bound to use, with the exception of I think there's an open market override if they're unable to do or unwilling to do the services outlined here. But that aside, Milford is being bound to use this company alone for these types of services.
That is my understanding.
Okay, and that completes my questions. Like I said, this agreement really reads for the city of Milford, I think, really well. We define the scope of work. The contractor has to do this work the way we say it's done. You get the oversight, the police chief, the mayor. When you say stop, they have to stop. When you don't like what they're going to do, they have to consult with you. as I read this in comparison to that other one says that we have to do whatever they tell us to do, whenever they are told to do it, whatever it costs us. This, I really, when I read it, something catastrophic has happened, and it paints a horrible picture of what Milford might be looking like, but it puts Milford in charge of Milford. So I was very, those few questions aside, I was very happy to see this kind of contract. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would just like to add, Steve Johnson really took the lead on this. He was the one that brought it forward to us, so I give a lot of credit to Steve.
Did you guys know who drafted this?
I'm sorry?
Who drafted it?
I have no idea. I assume it was the state.
I'd like to put him in contact with the Department of Homeland Security and have
Well,
them.
Mr. Chair, through you to Alderman Smith, this was a state bid contract. The other agreement you referred to was drafted by the federal government and Homeland Security. I'm happy to probably give you, I can Google the president's number, even that one.
Any more discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Alderman Pacelli, agenda item 8G.
Agenda item 8G, Board of Aldermen approval is requested for the attached resolution regarding grant application for Connecticut Department of Agriculture.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Bevan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, on item number 8G, we are going to possibly give the okay for a grant. But on H8H, which comes after, we're giving a cash advance on the grant application. So it appears that we're getting a cash advance on the money before we make the grant. Could someone explain how that actually works? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Bevan, this was a grant we applied for the community gardens as a result of much discussion regarding funding. I'd like to give a shout out to Alderman Jenkins for bringing this grant opportunity to the administration. This is the normal process we follow. Given this board structure, the mayor needs approval to sign the grant. It is a $5,000 reimbursable grant, so the following agenda item would be the authorization for us to provide the cash up front, provided that the state will reimburse us upon the conclusion of the grant.
What happens when we apply for the grant and let's say we don't get it?
The grant was awarded about a month ago, so we did get grant approval. Once this board blesses this document, the mayor will sign the contract. It'll go to the State Department of Agriculture. They'll give us a grant award, and we are allowed to spend $5,000 on activities and services related to the community garden. We provide proof that those services were completed. They'll send us a check.
Thank you very much.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Pacelli, agenda item 8H.
Agenda item 8H, Board of Aldermen approval is requested for the attached resolution regarding cash advance for grant application for Connecticut Department of Agriculture.
Again.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 9, new business not on the agenda. There is no new business. We'll go on to agenda item number 10, budget memo transfers. Alderman Pacelli.
Agenda item 10A, consideration of budget memo transfers number 9 and number 10, funds 1005 and 2,812.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Finance Director, I see that these transfers, there's a reference on number 9 to Contingency Fund 1005 and Contingency Fund 2812. How many of these contingency funds do we have in the city of Milford?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Smith, we only have one account. It's in the budget book, in the general fund budget. It's called contingency. I believe it's a small amount, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's as low as $5,000. And so when you look at the transfer form number 9, the current balance in the contingency is $275. And we use the contingency also as a pass-through for these transfers. So the money comes in from the transfer from, and then the transfer to, it goes out into the respective department accounts to address the shortfalls. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 11, refunds list. Alderman Pacelli.
Agenda item 11A, consideration of refunds in the amount of $77,039.06.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Smith.
I see my wife is in here for a $7 refund. Should I recuse myself? No? I guess I'm not going to recuse myself, Anna.
Any more discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda item number 12, reports of standing committees. Is there any committee reports? Seeing none, move on to reports of special committees. Is there any reports from any special committees? I don't see any, so we'll move on to relative to item 14 on the agenda, executive session. I respectfully submit the following for your consideration and action. 14A, consideration of settlement of Joseph De La Cruz versus City of Milford regarding 138 Woodmont Road. 14B, consideration of settlement of Kelly De La Cruz versus City of Milford regarding 114 Woodmont Road. 14C, consideration of settlement of Woodmont Realty Investors LLC versus City of Milford regarding 130 Woodmont Road. And last, 114D, consideration of settlement of 230 Old Gate Lane LLC versus City of Milford regarding 230 Old Gate Lane. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to go into executive session. All in favor?
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes, Mr.
procedurally,
Chairman.
if you could make a note to invite the city attorney and the mayor into executive session.
Joining us in executive session will be the mayor, Tony Giannattasio, and the city attorney, and the city assessor. I don't see the city assessor.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
can we take a 5-minute recess, please? A 5-minute recess, please?
5-minute recess.
Before executive session? Thank you.
Let's try to make it 5 minutes. Alderman Pacelli.
Item number 14A, consideration of settlement of Joseph De La Croce versus City of Milford regarding 138 Woodmont Road.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Pacelli.
Agenda item 14B, consideration of settlement of Kelly De La Croce versus City of Milford regarding 114 Woodmont Road.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Pacelli.
Agenda item 14C, consideration of settlement of Woodmont Realty Investors LLC versus City of Milford regarding 130 Woodmont Road.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion, please? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Pacelli.
Agenda item 14D, consideration of settlement of 230 Old Gate Lane LLC versus City of Milford regarding 230 Old Gate Lane.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. May I entertain a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We do not have a date for the final vote yet, but you'll all be notified when we come up with a date. This week is out, just to let you know, so you could do what you want to do this week.